For decades, locals had whispered about the strange and eerie occurrences in the Whispering Woods. Located miles away from the nearest village, the forest stretched endlessly, with trees so dense that even sunlight struggled to break through the canopy. Tales of disappearances, inexplicable sounds, and strange sightings had given the forest its infamous name. But like all such legends, curiosity often overshadowed fear, especially for thrill-seekers like Adam, Mia, Lucas, and Rachel. The four friends had grown up together, sharing a love for exploring the unexplained. When Adam suggested they investigate the Whispering Woods, the others were hesitant at first. But as the weekend approached, the allure of the unknown proved irresistible. Armed with flashlights, a tent, a few snacks, and recording equipment, they set out on a Friday afternoon, determined to uncover the truth. The journey to the forest was uneventful but ominous. As they got closer, the air grew colder, and an unnatural stillness replaced the usual chirping of birds and rustling of leaves. By the time they reached the forest's edge, the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. "Let's set up camp here," Mia suggested, pointing to a clearing just inside the tree line. "We can explore deeper tomorrow." The others agreed, but as they began to unpack, they noticed something strange. The forest seemed unnervingly silent. No crickets, no rustling leaves, not even the distant call of an owl. It was as if the woods were holding its breath. "Creepy," Lucas muttered, forcing a laugh to break the tension. They set up their tent and lit a small campfire. As darkness enveloped the forest, the group huddled around the flames, sharing ghost stories to lighten the mood. But their laughter was short-lived. Just as Rachel finished her story about a haunted doll, a faint whisper cut through the air. "Did you hear that?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The others nodded, straining their ears. The sound came again, soft and fleeting, as though someone was speaking just out of earshot. It seemed to come from all directions at once. "Probably the wind," Adam said, though his tone was uncertain. That night, none of them slept well. The whispers persisted, growing louder and more distinct as the hours passed. They weren't words, exactly, but a series of sounds that felt almost human. And yet, no matter how hard they tried to pinpoint the source, the whispers always seemed to stay just out of reach. By morning, the group was exhausted but determined. "Let's go deeper," Adam said. "If there's something out there, we'll find it." They packed their gear and ventured further into the forest. The deeper they went, the stranger things became. The trees seemed to close in around them, their gnarled branches forming unnatural shapes. Shadows danced across the forest floor, though the sun barely penetrated the canopy. And then there were the whispers, louder now, almost conversational, though the words were still unintelligible. At times, the whispers seemed to mimic their voices, repeating fragments of sentences they'd spoken moments earlier. It was unnerving, but Adam dismissed it as an auditory illusion. "It's just the way sound travels here," he said. "Don't let it get to you." But it was getting to them. Mia's hands were shaking. Lucas kept glancing over his shoulder, and Rachel clutched her flashlight like a lifeline. By mid-afternoon, they stumbled upon something unexpected, an old, crumbling cabin hidden among the trees. The wood was rotting, and strange symbols were carved into the walls. The air around the cabin felt heavy, almost suffocating. "This must be it," Adam said, his excitement barely masking his fear. "Let's check it out." "Are you serious?" Rachel asked. "This place screams, bad idea." But Adam was already pushing the door open. The others hesitated before following him inside. The cabin's interior was even more unsettling. The walls were covered in the same strange symbols, and the air smelled of damp wood and decay. A broken table and a few splintered chairs were the only furniture. In one corner, they found an old recording device, covered in dust. "Looks like someone was here before us," Lucas said, picking up the recorder. Adam pressed play, but the tape was distorted. Faint whispers echoed from the speakers, growing louder and more frantic before cutting off abruptly. "Let's leave," Mia said, her voice trembling. Now, as they stepped outside, the whispers grew deafening. The forest seemed alive, the trees swaying despite the absence of wind. Shadows moved in the corner of their vision, and the air felt charged with electricity. Suddenly, Lucas screamed. The others turned to see him clutching his arm, blood seeping through his fingers. "Something scratched me," he yelled, but when they looked, there was nothing there. Panic set in. They ran, leaving their gear behind. The forest seemed to twist and shift around them, the paths they'd taken earlier now unrecognizable. The whispers followed them, growing louder and more menacing. By the time they stumbled out of the forest, the sun had set, and the village lights were visible in the distance. They didn't stop running until they reached Adam's car. In the days that followed, they tried to move on, but the forest wouldn't let them. The whispers followed them home, invading their dreams and echoing in the silence. Lucas's scratch became infected, the wound spreading despite medical treatment. He grew pale and withdrawn, speaking of shadowy figures watching him from the corners of his room. Then, one night, Lucas disappeared. His apartment was empty, his belongings untouched. The only clue was a single message scrawled on the wall in his handwriting. "They're here." Desperate for answers, Adam, Mia, and Rachel returned to the forest, hoping to find their friend. But this time, the forest didn't let them leave. Weeks later, a group of hikers found their abandoned car at the forest's edge. Inside was a recording device. When authorities played the tape, they heard the voices of Adam, Mia, and Rachel calling for help. But over their cries was another voice, deep and guttural, speaking in a language no one could understand. The final words on the tape were clear: "Join us,